Welcome to NTV, NearTV's monthly entertainment magazine show. My name is Shauna, and each month we'll be coming to you with a selection of pieces, including film, entertainment, life stories and music. We also have a community section where we'll be looking at local stories and issues. So if you know of a person, group or event in your local area doing some good work that you would like to see featured on this show, you can get in touch at the address below. We meet with David Moore, who discusses how vast the universe is and tries to estimate how many stars are in it.
Hello and welcome to SpaceTime. I'm joined in studio by Mr. David Moore of Astronomy Ireland. And today, David, we're going to be taking a look at the universe at large. The universe is massive. Maybe you could help us get a little bit of a handle on just how big the universe is.
Yeah, I mean, the vastness of space is very difficult to imagine. And it's also very empty. So when you're writing a book or an article online or something like that, and you want to have a diagram, if you put one dot representing the Earth and another dot representing even just the moon is 30 times the Earth's width away, and it just looks like a very sparse diagram. So usually, with a bit of artistic license, the two are drawn a lot closer, but that gives people the impression that the space is crowded. It's nothing like our everyday existence where everything is getting in the way of us. You can't move around without bumping into something. In space, it's very, very empty. And the unit of measurement we use for stars is the light year. Light travels the fastest thing in the universe, 186,000 miles per second. It would go to the moon in just over a second. It would go around in circles, go around the Earth 7 times in 1 second. So it's very fast, and you can imagine how far it gets in 1 year. And the answer in miles is about 6 million miles. Now, most people can't imagine 1 million miles. I mean, think of your car. If it lasted 1 million miles for its whole life, you'd be really happy. Most cars don't last that long. And yet 1 light year is 6 million of those. So, and that's just 1 light year. There's no star within 1 light year of the sun. You have to go 4 light years to get to the nearest star. And the stars you see in the sky are tens to hundreds on average of light years away. So the distances are phenomenal. And then you look at our whole galaxy, the star city, it's about 100,000 light years across. So if one star blew up on one side, you wouldn't see it from the other side for 100,000 years.
And that's just in one galaxy alone?
In one galaxy, yeah. This is a big spinning star city that gravity is holding together with a black hole at the middle. So the distances are enormous. And then the number of stars in the galaxy is enormous as well. Roughly speaking, there's about 1 trillion stars in our galaxy, maybe half a trillion, but the nearest zero, it's about 1 trillion. And when the Hubble Space Telescope looked deep out into space to a patch of sky that should have been blank, so it could see anything that was very, very far away, no stars in the way, it found that there's about, well, scaling that up, it measured a very small patch, and there are thousands of galaxies, so working out how many there would be in the entire sky, we came out, roughly speaking, about 1 trillion galaxies, maybe 10 times less.
1 trillion galaxies.
Yeah, but so roughly 1 trillion galaxies, and each one would have roughly 1 trillion stars. So for a very quick back of the envelope calculation, you could say in the observable universe that we can see, there's about 1 trillion stars. Now remember, 1 trillion is 1 million million, so if you want to say it in millions, it's million 4 times. A million, 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 million. And that's a number difficult to imagine. And you want to try and start imagining it. Imagine that you won the lottery and you won €1 million and they paid you in €1 coins. You'd have a nice big pile of coins. But if you took each one of those coins and entered the lottery again, you were very lucky. And every time you won another €1 million, you'd have 1 million piles of €1 million coins. And that's only 1 million million. So imagine doing that 1 million times again and then 1 million times again.
It really puts us in our place, doesn't it?
You can, your brain gets a bit hurt and sore trying to imagine that number, but begins to give you some idea of how difficult a number that is to imagine. And that's the observable universe that made us.
Absolutely fascinating stuff there, David. Thank you very, very much for joining us, but unfortunately we've ran out of time.
It's been my pleasure, and thanks very much for having me.
And if you want to find out more, you can catch up with David at astronomy.ie to find the Astronomy Ireland website. And you can catch up with us, of course, on NearTV.ie. I hope you enjoyed the show. Take care.
Great stuff there. This month we have a change from our normal film review panel. NearTV takes the opportunity to meet with 2 people at the top of their game in Irish filmmaking. Terry McMahon, a writer and director, and Neilí Conroy, an actor who has appeared in many top Irish productions. They speak candidly about their experiences.
Oh, I love it. I love acting. I love reading the work when you're doing it and thinking about it, and yeah, I love it. It is a life, yeah. When you're signing up to a particular life, aren't you? You'll be up and down all the time. There's no security in it. So you do sacrifice different things. Actors lived, it's a very hard life. You know, you have long periods out of work, and I've seen me watch me dad all the years. And it's also something that you're kind of judged on as well, so I always had a massive fear. Like, if I tried it, what if I was rubbish? So when it came along, then I gave it a go, but I never thought I was going to be any great shape. So I was always kind of thinking, oh, I hope for the best, like. And that's ridiculous, but that's the way I was. I still am a little bit.
What's going on, Dad? They're all waiting for you downstairs.
Lend us £15 out of it, will you?
I haven't got it, Dad. I only brought a fiver.
You brought a fiver to a wedding.
What's going on?
The little flower girl's just run off with Melanie's handbag with your feckin' narcotics and my bloody speech, and she'll tell unless she gets £15.
Oh, God.
And then I did the van the next year. But I was on the phone constantly, get me in the audition, please, please. And that was huge because it's Italian 90 and it's a real special place in everyone's heart. But then intermission, I only had a day or two on that, you know, because they cast English and Scottish girls, or 2 Scottish girls, as the main roles, which was ridiculous, I thought. But so us Irish girls just got the small parts.
No sun this year. I might go down to Wexford or something. What about you? Do you ever smell these? They smell lovely, they do.
Me and Deirdre.
We broke up, didn't you?
How do you know?
That's all right then.
What an actor at their best does is they take their soul, or whatever you want to call it, and they put it on a table for everyone to examine. And they stand there watching their soul beat close to death, and then they put it back into their body and they begin again. Their level of courage, their level of decency, their level of generosity. There are some wacko actors out there, but this notion of prima donna actors is an absolute fallacy. Most of them are hard working beyond measure. They're doing all the work behind the scenes. They're the ones up until 4 o'clock in the morning learning stuff and trying to work something out. They're the ones who turn up and give everything they have every time. And they're the ones who are forgotten the moment they move on to the next one. They turn up as ghosts and they leave as ghosts. And yet they've left something behind that is, if it's captured properly, is more alive than anything we could imagine.
Preparation, I just read it and learn the lines and feel it and try and get into the character, really. Try and get inside the head of the character and into their body, really. If I read something, I kind of feel I'm more instinctual than kind of technical as an actor.
One thing you're hoping is that they're making discoveries live on camera. The moment that they make their discovery is the moment we capture it. That's what you're looking for at all times. An actor is never going to be able to do that if you give them too much direction. Because actors are so generous, they will do everything in their power to please their notion of what they think you want. So they actually will begin to imitate either what you've done for them, or they will try to attempt to present what they hope you want. Where in fact the most effective acting is when you empower them to transcend all of us in the room and become something extraordinary.
A knacker, a fucking little tramp, that's what you are. Queuing up for you the way. Must you change them? A tramp, that's all you are.
No.
Yes, you are.
We have to go.
Must you change? Much.
No, but I've done interviews where you're really made to seem a certain way, and really badly written interviews, and you're kind of mortified for years afterwards, yeah. Your man was, so patronising. And I was doing a show, a play, and I read it then, and it was rubbish. It made you feel rubbish like after it. So the less of them now, I think the better, of interviews like that. Yeah, it's very hard. Like, and at the same time, you need them if you're in a show, or, you know. I shouldn't say that because that's very bad, isn't it?
Yeah, you should say it. There are some wonderful
They're a funny
writers,
type.
but there are some wonderful writers out there who are working for the media, and there are some hack, incompetent whores who should not be allowed near the dictionary, much less an article.
But I've never had a really bad experience. They just kind of, but when you're young and those things are written, it makes you feel awful. Like, it makes you like, it floors you, you know. But there was nothing negative said about me. It was just the way it was written made you seem a certain way that just make you seem like a fool, like, you know.
The problem is when it becomes personal, when your personality and your personal life is used as a punching bag in the national media. That kind of leaves you a bit raw. But then you go, that's the price you pay. And suddenly you're in a position where you're so frustrated at what you've become that you decide you want one last attempt to make something that you can go to your grave knowing that you tried. And it was a film called Charlie Casanova. And it was one of the most despised films ever made, but we stand by it defiantly and proudly, and it began everything else afterwards. Charlie Casanova and Patrick's Day were written at the same time. The writer who wrote Charlie Casanova was supposed to be an incompetent moron. The writer who wrote Patrick's Day won a whole bunch of screenplay awards. It's the same writer writing both at the same time. So I'm not going to place less value on one and more value on the other because some moron outside defined it as being lesser or greater.
Ladies and gentlemen, all that shit.
What are you doing here on your birthday?
Waiting.
You got a name?
Patrick.
Thank Christ you weren't born on April Fool's Day.
You don't understand. He has mental health issues. He's not able to look after himself.
Patrick, tell me what you see.
If you're writing something, all you need is a pen and a piece of paper. Everything else requires money and requires other people. But even if you can't get a pen and a piece of paper, go to a bookies and take the betting slips and start writing at the back with one of their pencils. Literally that notion, that sense of, despite all the technological advancements, the one thing that hasn't changed is a blank piece of paper and a pencil and your imagination. And remarkably, that has value beyond most of our comprehension until you do it, because most people can't do it. And the people who produce films are constantly striving to find one piece of writing that excites them, because most of the writing they come across doesn't excite them at all. It's derivative, it's generic, it's imitative, it's all these bland celebrations of the mediocre, whereas if they find a piece of writing, they may not even like the idea of what it's trying to explore, they may not ever intend on making it, but if they're excited by the writing, they'll protect it. So with me, it was a case of somebody recommended somebody read something, and they read it, and then suddenly I'm on a plane to Los Angeles. So it's one of those things where it has value beyond measure. And then I started to write a screenplay from a position of total fear and desperation, and felt that if you just completed that screenplay, that something might change. And it took a long time, but eventually I finished it, and things began to change very fast. And people read it, and people responded to it, and suddenly I was being hired to write other people's material. And you end up becoming a writer by default, because you don't have the academic qualifications, or you don't even have the belief that you're a writer, but suddenly it starts to happen for you, and people start paying you, so you do it, and you deliver it. And then you end up writing crap television, and then you end up writing some decent stuff, but the decent stuff doesn't get made, and the crap television gets celebrated. So you watch movies and love them, but you never thought for a second you'd ever be a part of the people who make them. And then similar to Neilí, I never finished school, and I was homeless for a while and all that kind of crap. So you become so far removed from the possibility of anything that you never conceive of a notion of doing something beyond the limitations of where you are. In terms of the films, I think one of the major things with actors is there's always a moment on a set when the crew realize something special is happening. Because crews they're kind of forgotten, and they're kind of treated as the invisible ghosts on the set. But they're oftentimes more invested than anybody is aware of. And there's a moment that happens when the crew becomes still, and they realize, at last, we're working on something that's going to be beyond the standard nonsense that we're often hired to do. And that's the moment you're looking for, and that moment comes from the actors. And it's a moment that usually happens, if you're lucky, on day 2 or 3, where people realise there's a level of commitment that's just happened that has upped the ante for everybody. On Patrick's Day, it was a scene with Mo Dunford and Catherine Walker that was on the first day, and it's a breakup scene, and everybody just went, something just happened. Then the next day, Mo Dunford had a breakdown scene, and then I asked for the set to be cleared, and suddenly people are standing in hallways and are watching on monitors, and there's a sense of urgency and a sense of possibility that everybody becomes a part of, and it becomes contagious and infectious in the most creative sense of the word. I think the single most important thing is that on a film set or on any kind of set, that people feel empowered enough to get excited enough to want to make a contribution that elevates everybody. And when that happens, it goes from potentially disastrous to potentially extraordinary.
Filmmaking, no, I'd be more thinking of theatre. But I would love to direct, and I'd love to write as well. I'd love to do all that, and that'll all happen in the future.
And then you go back to your own previous world and you realise the only things that make a difference are the things that are made. Everything else is theory. So if you're going to write something that's a place that's worth protecting and a place worth living and dying by, and somebody will respond to it.
This month, NearTV visits the Sean O'Casey Centre in Eastwall, which is renowned for keeping the links alive between historical events and the community. We visit them for their event on Kathleen Lynn, a doctor who was heavily involved in the area during 1913 to 1916.
Sarah Lundberg was a member of the Eastwall History Group, also a member of Alternative Vision's Oral History Group, and involved with very many other projects. Tragically, this time last year, Sarah passed away, which was a great shock to all of us. She was involved in many projects, and a lot of those projects went unfinished. She had a lot of great ideas for work we could do in the future, which obviously she's never going to be involved with. So for many of us, it was a real personal loss to our friends and to our family, but again, we were also very conscious that there was a great body of work potentially gone that she would have been involved with. So we decided to honour her memory with an annual Sarah Lundberg Summer School. So this is the inaugural one, and the topic we went with was Kathleen Lynn, because Sarah, along with others, had a great plan for a major publishing project to look at the life and the legacy of Kathleen Lynn.
We have been talking today about Dr. Kathleen Lynn, a socialist, a feminist and a nationalist. Kathleen Lynn was born in County Mayo, and she was the daughter of a Church of Ireland clergyman. As girls of her class, her middle class, were educated, she was sent to Alexandra College in Dublin, where she received an excellent education. She always seemed from a very young age to want to do more than what girls of her class usually did, which would be get married and have children. So she begins to train as a doctor at the Catholic University Cecilia Street School of Medicine, which becomes the UCD School of Medicine later on. However, Kathleen also was very much a suffrage activist. She was involved in first wave suffrage activism, joined the Irish Women's Suffrage and Local Government Association and is on their executive. But she also joins the Women's Social and Political Union, the British militant suffrage group led by the Pankhursts. So she said she was admiring of the militancy of some of the suffragettes of the early 20th century. She was very much also involved in social activism, and through her knowledge and friendships with people like Helena Maloney and with Countess Markovich, she is introduced to James Connolly and to the cause of labour, basically. She's a vice president at one stage of the Irish Women Workers' Union. And during the 1913 lockout, she worked in Liberty Hall and acted as a doctor and also as an activist. And it's here she met her lifelong friend and companion, Madeleine French Mullen.
One of the speakers today, Carmel Darcy, gave a wonderful paper on Dr. Lynn, and she read through her diaries. They lived together for 40 years, and in reading through the diaries, Carmel, reading the language and reading the diaries, Carmel realised that, you know, the significance of the relationship, well, that it was a lesbian relationship. But Kathleen Lynn was very intensely private, you know, so if anybody in her circle knew, it remained very tight. She would have been a very private woman.
One of the important points of learning from the past and learning from history is to see the radicalism of the past and try and correlate that to today. As previous speakers have said, the link between the poverty of the early part of the century and the current austerity and the imposed poverty by political choice is something that we as activists must try and get across the communities and must try and portray publicly.
The problem is with so much of the austerity that's been impacted now, it is affecting women. If you look at the lone parents cut, if you look at the withdrawal of funding to the likes of the Rape Crisis Centre, which are essential services, especially for women, you would think that we would draw inspiration from women like Kathleen Lynn, and we would, use them and their quotes and their story as inspirations to get out of it.
I think it's absolutely essential that groups like the East Wall History Society and other groups citywide contribute from the ground up so that people in the localities have something to actually look towards, to resonate with, as opposed to a top-down approach.
I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back at the same time, same place next month. In the meantime, you can catch up with us on neartv.ie or on our Facebook page. To see the full-length videos, please log on to our website. We'll finish off this month with a recent NearFM session with upcoming singer-songwriter Eoin Martin. And from all the team here, bye-bye.
My scores break me, take me, make me into something much more. Something much, much more. Don't let me down. Don't let me down. Don't let me down.